We're good to go. Cool.
Okay. I went through, some people were writing questions that said for Eugene and Victor. I tried to pick through them. If you have a really important question, you might need to write it again. I hope I didn't lose any. So obviously, I would like to welcome Mr. Victor Bevine for joining us. These groups that came here to talk to us and interact with us, this is a big deal. If you try to do this remotely, it's slow and it's painful. It's much easier to talk to people. So I can't thank you guys enough for coming out here and submitting to the process. I have the easy job because none of you guys are looking at me like I'm saying things that are true or false or firing questions at me. It's much more difficult to actually come up with the responses. So I just want to let Victor start. He has some things he wanted to follow up on and some things he wanted to say, so I'm going to get out of his hair. So please welcome Victor Bevine. Thank you.
How are you? So thank you for all being here, and thank you, Caitlin, I know who's not in the room. Thank you, Craig, for giving us this forum. I need to start with something right off the bat to respond to something that Eugene said in terms of the offer for the third federation, the overarching federation. The reason why that was made on Parkour Research was because the formal response that we made to Parkour Earth, which was in writing, was never responded to. So basically, Eugene approached me, said Eugene and I have known each other a long time. We'd had many pleasant conversations in the past, but he said, we have a proposal for you. The proposal was basically close down your organization and join ours. And we looked through it. He finally offered us a seat on the board. We pushed, offered us a seat on the board. We looked through it. We said, look, we're not ready to do this. We said we will. What we would like to do. We really respect the process. We respect what you're trying to do, and that we would like to have a 6-month dating period where we have the two organizations basically start working together, form a working group, start doing events together, see what are the strengths of both organizations, and then join in a way that really would maximize that strength. And the only response I get, I'll run it by the others, never got a response, a formal response to that. So the third idea, the other idea that was presented was about creating basically the sort of NISA model, Athena rather model, what water sports has, of the overarching organization where everybody has autonomy under it. That was the reason why we put it on Parkour Research, because it seemed to be that's where people in support of Parkour Earth were tuning in and were responding. So I'm going to basically, in terms of other things, I'm going to talk more from the heart than the head. Eugene is obviously, he's a master of governance, and a lot of the things, obviously I would echo. Some things he knows a lot more than I do, and we have advisors that we count on to do a lot of that. But I also want to address the elephant in the room, which is the relationship between IPF and WFPF. So I'm not a practitioner, as everybody knows. I got involved in parkour because I'd been in youth development for 15 years, working with at-risk youth. David is the same. One day I was working with a really difficult group of kids. I was driving back from working with them. I turned on NPR, and there was a piece on parkour. And I used to have this recurring nightmare when I was a little boy that I was being chased by a Tyrannosaurus. And the only way I could get away was my arms would lengthen and I'd push myself like a monkey. So they started talking about the Kong balls, and I said, oh my God, that's what I used to dream. And then they started talking about how kids were getting the metaphor that by overcoming physical obstacles, they could overcome other obstacles as well. I knew I had to do something with this. So that was the beginning. That's when we got, I had a third partner, Francis, who had the deal at MTV. So we have, from the very first, we have been a global organization that has attempted to bring together diverse points of view. Our first group that we brought together for the MTV show was Daniel Lubaka, Tim Sheaf, Ryan Doyle, at one point was Chase Armitage was part of the discussion group, Oleg Vorslov, people who were, you couldn't have found somebody who was more anti-competition than Daniel Lubaka. We managed to bring, said, why can't everybody come together? And at that point, everybody was still fighting over flips versus no flips, and it was just all this, So we asked the guys, what do you need more than a TV show? What else do you need? So they said, we need leadership. There's no leadership in the parkour community in the world. Everybody's fighting, nobody's looking out for the overarching health of the sport. So we said, okay, partner with us, we'll do that. Because we have no dog in this fight. We're just fascinated by everything you do. We want to help you bring this together. So that was really and the things that, Tim Sheaf said to us one day, he said, I can't believe it's the first time anybody's ever listened to me. And that's been, WFPF has our you know, as I said, we've been global from the start, and our thing has always been listen to people and not preach at them, not dictate to them what parkour is, what their needs are. Tell us, what's your need as a parkour community? And that's why we have such tremendous strength in places like the MENA region, you know, in Latin America, and you know, we're a very strong organization. So we also, you know, we were warned about what FIG was going to do, that this would ultimately happen. So 3.5 years ago, we started IPF. We were told, got to start a nonprofit, got to start a governing body. So in all good faith, we did that. We applied to Sport Accord, which is still a very important organization in terms of protecting you against governance. Yes, it's very difficult if you're competing with an existing member to get recognition, but we had our meeting in June. We were invited in June, and we had a lot of encouragement and said, look, we understand. We're here to help adjudicate, and you just have to make your case. And one of the cases is getting your 40 countries. So we're, you know, so a little bit about conflict of interest. The definition of conflict of interest is not that you are associated with a for-profit company in the same space. The definition is that is the for-profit company benefiting from the not-for-profit at the expense of the not-for-profit? So is the not-for-profit being forced to make decisions for the good of the for-profit company? If anything in this organization, you know, and yes, have we been leveraging WFPF's relationships to help IPF grow? Absolutely. And the one example that we have of a sport that has defeated FIG is cheerleading. And cheerleading, the guy who's the head of the Cheerleading Federation is also the head of Varsity Cheerleading, which is the biggest cheer organization in the world. Right? So that's not it's not unusual, and that's the only sport that has stopped FIG. When FIG had their eyes on a sport, it was cheerleading. They stopped it, right? Because they were already so organized. So we, you know, have chosen to go down that route. We are also, David and I are willing to make. We are making a commitment that by, you know, we're on our Constitution was written according to the basic Olympic standards, which says that every Olympic cycle you're going to have elections, you're going to have all new officers, you know, so the board will elect a new group of leaders. That we're making a commitment that by 2020, when is the next time that we'll change over, that we will not hold positions on both companies. We will either have resigned from the seat positions at WFPF, or we will give over IPF to another group of leaders. We're committed to that. We're committed to making this grow. And you know, one of the reasons we weren't willing to just sort of, you know, give over, you know, without any kind of dating period, was because we represent communities in the world that are not represented by what we call the standard parkour community that's on parkour research. We represent communities in the developing world that we've been working with for 7 years. I mean, we have 5 countries now that are our member organizations, member federations, and 4 of them have national and Olympic recognition. And we've worked with the people in Iran for 7 years to build their federation, to build the sport in Iran to a point where, you know, initially they were saying, the Iranian government was saying, we're not going to approve an American federation because we hate America. But nevertheless, we got it to the point, we helped get them to the point where they, you know, where they have been approved. So that's it. You know, you can have, constitutions are great, but you know, the former Soviet Union had the most progressive, democratic constitution in the history of the world, and it was a totalitarian dictatorship. Right? And so it's also about looking at track records, looking at a track record of an organization. WFPF, before IPF, has a history of inclusion, of always being willing to learn from our mistakes, which we're still willing to do. We're always willing to partner with good, you know, people of goodwill, and that's been our history, and it's been why we've been as successful as we have been. So that's basically, you know, that's where IPF is. You know, we're going to be announcing the full board soon, which will be very representative from around the world. And we have another 5 countries that are going to be announcing soon as well, that are at least have their application into their government, their National Sports Council, and that's it.
Well, I think a lot of the questions here, like there's sort of two flavors. A lot of the questions are about nuanced details of things like conflict of interest versus, federal tax exempt status and,
Sure.
and things like that. And so the one question I have, like I always like to back out and get the executive view. If a certain set of countries are engaged in IPF, and then you have a different set of countries that are engaged in Parkour Earth, those countries don't work, they're not working together already. So you're going to wind up with, we already have this situation, where you have two different independently developing entities, and the net result is simply that all of us are weaker, or we're all going to be at a lower potential. So it seems to me that at some point, one of the entities is going to have to voluntarily surrender, because there's
not necessarily.
But do you see a way to reconcile
No, absolutely
the two?
not. If you have people of, again, if you have people of goodwill on both sides, it can come together. One doesn't necessarily have to surrender. I mean, that's completely, I think that's completely.
But do you think that, let's say the U.S. forms a national organization in like a fully, very detail-oriented fashion, are you envisioning that entity participating in both of the?
Now, that's going to be the decision of that national federation. I mean, it's, this is a long game. Again, we go back to skateboarding. Tim McFerrin had his, he has his skateboarding federation, which was around for many, many, many years, and had done many events around the world. And Gary Ream came along with his, he brought Tony Hawk to the meeting at the IOC, and they said, okay, and he said, okay, I'll do it. I'll put it under Fierce. They gave it to him instead of the guy who'd been organizing skateboarding for years. So it's, so it's not, again, it's not uncommon. As Eugene said, this is not an uncommon situation to have rivalries, to have encroachments, and I think, ultimately, I actually think it's a healthy part of the process, because it's, there are different opinions, and the opinion should be expressed.
Right, you definitely want the debate to happen, so people can see it. But I think everybody is trying to sort out, all right, the French went left and Iran went right.
Right.
Now how are we going to solve that? And I really think that it only makes sense for there to be one global body.
I agree.
And I personally, I don't like the term governance. I don't really like that this session is called the governance session, because it automatically puts everybody in the mindset of what is that entity going to direct downwards. That's how governance works. And I like the idea that Parkour Earth and IPF have a specific vision, which is about a specific vision and mission statement about advancing parkour. But I don't think that you can have two completely different entities with the same mission. I think obviously you can, but that's not going to work out well. That's not going to enable us to unify against an entity like FEED. And I really think it's going to come down to, we have to, as a community from the bottom up, we have to decide how do we pick which entity to back.
Yep.
And I personally don't have a problem if one entity has, spiders under the bed, details, the T's that should be crossed. That doesn't bother me. Those things can always be straightened out. It's just a question of what do we do as a global community of individual people? What do you do when you look at two entities and you go, one entity has all its T's crossed, it's brand new. Another entity has a long track record of having the right idea, but doesn't have all the T's and I's crossed. How do you pick between the two? And I really think the answer has to come individually from us.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
But the question, what I was getting at before is, how long do you think you would feel comfortable resisting, if the groundswell is America's organizing and we're going to say, well, I think we should go to Parkour Earth, and that's the consensus, and then, well, now maybe Canada joins. Like, at what point would you be willing to?
I can't. That's an unfair question. Yeah, it's an unfair hypothetical. I mean, who's to say that's where the groundswell is going to go? We don't know, and I'm willing to, we're willing to just keep doing what we're doing. We don't know what the outcome will be ultimately. We do agree that it should be one world federation for the sport. FIG doesn't care either way.
Right.
FIG's going to do. They're going to do what they're going to do, whatever we do. So it's even if we were unified, I don't necessarily think it would stop them at this point. They're going to do what they're going to do, and whether they'll be successful at it is a whole other question. But I agree. But I can't tell you how long. I don't know. And in terms of the community, absolutely, it's going to be the communities around the world who decide. And I think the best thing you can do, to answer that question, if I could tell you to do one thing for parkour or for, not just IPF, but for this whole issue, is to educate yourself as best you can. and don't necessarily react out of, so much on parkour research is just, I have to say it's just toxic.
I totally agree. You're like,
it's just toxic and crazy. And it's, you've got to have people reasonably discussing things, and not always, there's a great, and I'm not sure who said it first, but Obama loved to use this term. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's how we, that's our motto. We're just, and we admit we're not perfect at all, and we're struggling to be better all the time. And we keep. I mean, I have two of our partners here that I'm just so proud.
I was
Sam
going to say,
Parham.
the change to the Constitution is clearly a reaction, an attempt to improve, to be able to deal with IOC. So that, there is change happening there, but it seems to me that it may be that there has been enough water under the bridge that certain constituents aren't going to switch. They're just going to go after Parkour Earth. There are a bunch of questions.
I agree, because
Yeah,
I agree.
that's how humans work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's called the human being. What I'm just looking at is there are a number of questions which my personal preference wouldn't be to go into nitpicking details about, somebody actually checked the federal tax exempt status, and there are other.
And I'll answer that.
And I'm like, well, it's a matter of public record, so I'm not even. It's not necessary to talk about it because those are things that would have to be clearly cleaned up to get up to the level of the organization that PE has created.
Right, and I'll tell you that exactly immediately. We started we launched it as a nonprofit. Nonprofit originally was in Indiana. We changed it to New Jersey because Indiana was a mistake. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't know that I had to then apply for a 501c3. It's just honest. It's been applied for now, so that's in the middle. That T is in the middle of being crossed.
So someone asked about, and thought till I find it. You're also on the board of the
USA Parkour.
Yeah, no, but was there another one? I apologize. I lost the question. Does anybody remember? Somebody asked me a question. Was it about USA Parkour?
Most likely. Or USA Sports Council, maybe?
You're nodding. Was it your question?
USA Sports
What's
Council?
the question?
What's your objective with being on board, and what's the objective with the USA Sports
Of USA Sports Council? It's a very new organization. A guy named Alfredo Lamont started it. I just think he's trying to, because there aren't a lot of organizations in the U.S. that are just supportive of sport in general. I think he's just trying to begin that. So we're still defining what the mission is of that organization. But I think he's a guy with a lot of experience, and so I'm curious to see where that's going to go. But I don't have a tremendous, I don't have a lot at stake in that. It's just I want to see where it's going to go.
In the picking at threads of the Gordian knot here. So IPF lists USA Parkour as a national governing body on its website, and I would presume that means that IPF considers USA Parkour to be the national governing body for the U.S. And that would be
right.
That's a thorny.
Yeah,
question.
it's a thorny issue, and again, we've been functioning. We've been doing a lot of the things. USA Parkour has been doing a lot of the things that a governing body is supposed to do.
Looks like a duck.
Yeah,
Quacks like a duck.
exactly.
It's a duck.
So it's de facto, and it doesn't mean that another one can't arise, or, we've now turned. I've turned over USA Parkour to Justin Schaefer is now executive director of USA Parkour. So I'm absolving myself of that, and we're figuring out what the governance of that would be. Again, we these organizations that we began, the way we've done it, why we've done it the way we've done it is because there was a need.
Right.
And we answered.
First one to act.
We answered the need. The need was for, there were people who wanted to teach, but right after we did the MTV show, we got phone calls and emails. We want to teach parkour. We can't get insurance. Can you help us? So we started on that process. We developed the certification program on which the insurance was based. And 10,000 kids have gone through that program. Now again, we didn't start USA Parkour as a nonprofit. We're beginning starting a new nonprofit now that's going to actually be the actual entity. And again, we're willing to see how things go. We're willing to partner with people. We're always happy to hear ideas, and so it's it's all a work in progress.
and like our discussion with Eugene was all basically global in nature because Eugene's from
Right.
the UK. So let's go down the the question of national organization and national governance, for lack of a better word. What is the actual mission of USA Parkour, and how might that mission change as you're backing into the new entity, for a better description?
Right. Well, again, it's exactly what every national federation is for, is to represent the sport, to help determine how the sport's going to work within that country, and to represent it on the international level. We're determining first of all, there is a discussion group going on that Justin's a part of among 6 entities talking about what a U.S. national federation would look like. So that's in process. We're trying to determine what would the regions be. Would it be state by state? Would we define 5 or 6 regions the way USA Gymnastics does? So it's all those things are still being, but again, it's all these federations are to promote the sport. I mean, one thing, again, about just the fact of there being USA Parkour, we're very in touch with USA Gymnastics. We go to their Congress every year, and people in the gymnastics world in the U.S., they know USA Parkour, and they don't think it's right what FIG is doing. They say, no, you're the guys.
Yeah, that's going to be. I need to take a brief break. Ed, do you want to?
No, we're good for now.
You're good? Okay, but I had a note about RAM in the camera. I don't want to like turn this into like a nitpick fest. What I'm wondering is, so USA Parkour, and correct me if I'm wrong, USA Parkour actually offers a certification program, and to be part of that organization, to be a gym, you need to have there's specifications about what instructors you have to maintain in your organization.
It's to get the insurance, you have to have that.
So you could be an independent gym and not use the insurance, and then you could still have a participatory vote within USA Parkour.
Sure, yeah. It was a requirement of the insurance to have the certification.
Yeah, insurance is a tough nut to crack in the States, and I really think a national organization would have a hard time producing an insurance product that it could actually get out to all the individual gyms.
Well,
because you have to start specifying the certification programs before they're willing to let you cover outdoor events.
But USA Gymnastics used to have an insurance program. They dropped it, 10 or 15 years ago, but they had an insurance program. A lot of U.S. governing, but USA Rugby has an insurance program. So it's the biggest challenge to insurance is numbers, and that's what we've been going through.
That is the best way to get the economy of scale, is to aggregate.
So you have to have, and we've basically had 10,000 kids go through the program, the USA Parkour programs, and that's you'd say, well, that's pretty significant, but in terms of, you'd say, why is cheerleading so insurable when it's far more dangerous than parkour? It's because there are 20 million people doing cheerleading. So I mean, and again, if that became the official governing body, because people have asked us, what do we think of other certifications? And we always say, do them all. You're going to learn something from everyone, something different. So I think USA Parkour, and just to answer a question that was asked earlier, I think would have to acknowledge a number of certifications, not just the WFBF certification.
Do you happen to know, this is a slightly different question, do you happen to know what would the path look like for it to become recognized by our federal government in any way, shape, or form?
Well, there is no federal government.
Is there a parallel path that's been done by, say, tennis or by volleyball?
Well, it's only the USOC. There's no U.S. Sports Council. The USA Sports Council is in name only. It doesn't really function as that, as in other countries, as Eugene said. We don't have that. We just have the USOC.
And what's the USOC's hoop? What's their definition for, yep, you're the national organization?
You have to have had a certain number of events, a certain number of championships. Do you have representative bodies in every state? Are you a nonprofit? And in fact, the NFL is a governing body, and it's a nonprofit, which is a super joke. But it is the truth.
A very interesting detail about the NFL.
Roger Goodell makes $30 million a year. But whereas again, correctly, the NBA is not. But yeah, so it's there's a long application. You have to satisfy. It's a process of a couple of years.
And I'm just wondering what your thoughts would be on saving or keeping the USA Parkour component of it, making it into our national governing body, and then having that be pitching our hat into Parkour Earth. Would you be willing to?
Again, everything is possible. Everything is on the table. You know, it's just you know, hypotheticals are really, again, we've partnered with all kinds of people. That's all we've ever done is partnered WFPF. You know, so it just, you know, it's just always got to come from a place of, it's got to come from a place of mutual respect and acknowledgement of what the different organizations have done, and we're all for that.
Chapter 7. How about an easy one while I read? Do you happen to know how many gymnastics gyms now offer parkour programs because of USA parkour certifications and insurance?
65 currently.
65?
Yeah, across in almost every state in the union.
Yeah, I mean, a follow-up question is like, you know, do you ensure these programs stay true to the culture and movement of parkour? Certainly you would check in on them in terms of their certification and that kind of thing.
Yes.
But how do you keep track of whether, or like, how do you know they're not off teaching obstacle course racing, but filling in the paperwork and still being under US?
Well, we do have some gyms that are actually ninja gyms that we do, because nobody will insure that. But we say that they have to have, and the only way we'll insure a ninja gym is if they have, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm ignoring this part of the room, I apologize. The only way we'll insure a ninja gym is if they have to have a real regular parkour program as well. Because the way we talk about it is, our sort of description is, ninja is like painting by numbers and parkour is like learning how to paint. So when we've convinced that, you know, we've said to the insurance company that it's a practical application of parkour. So that's how but they have to have a parkour program in order to teach ninja and get insured by us.
Can I ask that? That's a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So specifically what I was asking was, how do you ensure that, because I taught at a gymnastics gym in San Diego with Chris, and the big issues that I ran into was people's body mechanics of jumping and landing changed when they're on spring floors. There was a neglect of taking Kenny seriously because everything was squishy surfaces, and then also the majority of the students would only train inside, and then view parkour essentially as a part of that gymnastics gym, and that was the focus on parkour. How do you ensure that those gyms don't perpetuate that?
Well, that's a really good question. First of all, you know, that's why Robbie is really, you know, Robbie Corbett's really the head of the certification, because he's got, you know, he does have experience in gymnastics, cheerleading, and parkour. You know, the majority of his teaching experience is parkour, but he knows enough where he can sort of bridge that gap, and we do insure outdoor classes. They can go outdoors if it has to be a closed and controlled environment. So what we can't insure is, we can't insure somebody just going through the forest and, you know, jumping on anything. We just can't, because we don't know what the obstacles, what the risks are going to be, and
Right, and that's a restriction of the insurance.
of the insurance
Yeah.
company, you know, and we try to push the envelope as much as we can. But, you know, we're hoping that the instructors, you know, that we're instilling that in the instructors, and the instructors are bringing that to the gyms. At the moment, that's basically the way we hope to guard against that. I mean, again, we can't, you know, the fact is, little kids, in order for their parents to approve of them doing parkour, little kids are going to train. They want them to train in a safer environment. They want them to train indoors. So it's, you know, it's a matter of parents want the kids to train indoors. That's my experience, you know, that they want it to be in a sort of controlled environment.
How about a show of hands? If you run a kids program, how many of you would say your parents want them indoors, and how many would say your parents want them outdoors?
Yeah.
You're all awake. Okay,
Indoors.
Indoors. Parents want the kids indoors?
Indoors to start.
Indoors to start? Okay, and
Yeah,
then
sure, at the younger
outdoors
age.
at a significant age? Okay, what do you think drives that transition for you or for them?
Can you specify your age range there?
I don't know, I would say probably go out at like 10, 8,
Oh,
6?
we go at 5. 6.
What keeps them in under
And
5?
and tell me, so how do you, in what way do you, what kind of an environment is it? It just basically
It's an open public space.
open public space?
But our rules are very different.
Right. Oh, and where are you?
Scotland.
Oh, Scotland, right. Yeah, because you also have socialized insurance.
Alice had a,
Yeah, national health.
Victor.
Yeah.
Alice wanted to
Hi.
follow up
I
on.
just want to ask a follow-up question related
Sure.
to the gymnastics gyms and the certifications
Uh-huh.
and things like that. I mean, I can we can totally understand that before there were critical mass of parkour gyms, it made sense to kind of promote the sport through these certifications, allowing parkour to be taught in gymnastics gyms. But now that there are a lot more parkour gyms and a lot of people, I think, in their communities want to start even more parkour gyms, do you think that there's an opportunity for them to pivot and stop allowing certifications of parkour classes in gymnastics gyms, given that the fact that FIG is already trying to improve on the sport, kind of building a culture at the grassroots level of incorporating parkour into gymnastics is essentially working against our interests as a community, right?
Well, it's a fair question. I don't really think it's reached a critical mass yet of parkour gyms. I mean, we'll ensure parkour only gyms as well. But I'm also always tell people that if you're a parkour only gym, you can probably get cheaper insurance elsewhere. But the requirement of the insurance is that you have to keep the parkour and the gymnastics program separate. So, you know, again, I don't think there's that many parkour gyms around that you should deny the opportunity for kids to get parkour in a safe environment that's taught by a certified instructor.
And is that decision or is that opinion coming from the parkour community, or is that coming from a small group of people within your organization?
It's our, we've made a decision about that. Yes, it's a fair argument, but we have made a decision about that.
You said you're
Wait, one second.
Mhm.
Am I holding any questions that are like we're burning? Because I have Blake, and then we have, just to give you an idea where we are here, we're at 10 of, and we have to be out of here at 4:30. We have to like stand up and pack up. So we can easily go another 15, 20 minutes, and I'm totally cool with just opening this up. If you can like have a grammatical question, things that end in question marks, okay? And something that you can like say in a breath, and then we'll just go back and forth, and I'll just play street cop. So,
I was just following up on Ed's point and saying that we do the same thing they do.
Oh, for
We're
age.
based in the US.
okay,
So
and then I don't know his name in the back.
that wasn't a question. It was more of like kind of joining in.
Okay, and then I think in the front.
I was going to ask if you found out that one of the ninja gyms that you certified, give insurance to, wasn't teaching parkour, what would you guys do?
Take the insurance away. Yeah.
You cool with me? We'll just open it up, and I'll
Sure,
I'll
yeah,
just
yeah,
traffic cop, and then
Yeah.
I just thought there was definitely an emotional response to, not the last question, but the question before from a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I just think most people may not be thinking about the real scale there. If you're in 65 gyms, gymnastics gyms, and the idea that perhaps they shouldn't be in gymnastics gyms because it's taken away from parkour doesn't really make sense to me, since in just my little county, I've got 30 gymnastics gyms. Being in, that's less than 2 a state. That's nothing. So if we want to create our own thing, we can do that in addition to this program.
Right.
This program is like 1% of 1% of 1% of the gymnastics gyms in the U.S.
And it's also, I think it's a feeder. So if you create a great parkour gym in a community, and kids have been, taking it at a gymnastics gym, they're going to probably then graduate to the parkour gym. I mean, it's still introducing them to the sport and the ideas of the sport.
the hat with the hat. Sorry.
Just to bounce off what you just said, my question is separate. I believe that parkour specific gyms are north of 50, maybe 55 facilities now between North America. So it's already rapidly approaching the number that you mentioned before. I think largely what we're talking about is just in terms of if there are, say, so just to use that example, 6 times as many gyms in your initial area. There is certainly the worry, as you all just allowed for, it might get to a point where it's oversaturated in gymnastics rather than ours. My question was,
I was going to say.
sorry, I just heard what you were saying. I just wanted to see the number. Obviously, we talked about this a little bit before, even from yourself, how your perspective is coming from it. Since the beginning of WFBF and all these organizations you're dealing with, you've had an uphill battle with PR and with dealing with people's public perception of what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it. What steps are you taking to address those grievances, and how much do you think you can even do?
We're not going to address grievances. Grievances are other people's problems. We're trying now to be I mean, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, address
That's
criticism.
that's why I was at Jump Fest, to just so that we speak more, we're more in the public view. I mean, David and I never expected to be the face of the company. We really put the athletes forward. We wanted it to be an athlete-driven company, and a lot of time people, for a long time didn't really want to hear from us. So we're really happy that the conversation is now engaged, and we are. Any question you ask, I will answer honestly, and we're going to try and do more and more of that, so that there's more understanding, and then people can still make a decision on their own. But grievances are another issue.
Hi.
Hi.
So IPF released a conflict of interest statement.
Mm-hmm.
And in Article 6.4, it said, to quote, "And to maintain its federal tax exemption, it must engage primarily in activities which accomplish one or more of its tax-exempt purposes." Is that an error, or is IPF federally tax-exempt?
IPF has applied for its federal tax exemption.
Has applied, so it's not federally tax-exempt.
No, but it is. But it doesn't. But that doesn't negate that statement. That statement is saying that it will.
Once it has obtained
Yeah.
federally tax-exempt status,
Right.
it will behave in
Right.
accordance with that.
And it's already behaving in accordance with it.
Okay, so
Even
IPF
without-
has been operating since 2014 when it was incorporated.
Right.
And it was incorporated in the state of New Jersey, and that's where it currently exists as a nonprofit.
Right.
I
Correct.
think it was
In
first
New
incorporated.
First in Indiana.
but that was
Indiana.
just
So
convenience.
in New Jersey, it's not required of nonprofits to make their financial statements public.
Correct.
However, in the spirit of transparency and good governance, and seeing as you want to be the National Federation to represent our
Mhm.
sport, are your financial statements, since your incorporations, publicly available?
We can make it publicly available, as no money has run through IPF. IPF has been completely volunteer-based. It's been out of our pockets that we've basically created the website, and anything that was, but there have been no profits going in or out.
Okay.
So it's a, yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say Andy had a question, and then I think we went ahead.
I wrote a question.
Yeah, like I was like, well, so just read it to me.
It's about all the different organizations and the quality.
You want me to read it to you?
Well,
It's-
if you could say it, so I don't say it and sound horrible.
Oh, because nobody will figure out that your question was the history of, I can almost tell you what it was at the top of my head, the history of WFPF, IPF, here you go. So my understanding of people's issue with WFPF, IPF, KO, is that everything that you've produced is of lower quality than other things that are available. So this makes parkour look bad. So even if I'm not choosing to participate in that thing, you're putting out that message of lower quality. So is quality something, clearly it's something you care about, that's a strange way to say it, but why would anyone want to trust IPF with our sport, given the history that this person.
So basically, let's have you stop beating your wife.
Right. Did you notice that I didn't read it to you? Because I'm like, I couldn't figure out how to pick that
I mean,
out.
again, that's for the market to decide. If you think it's lower quality, don't use it. You know, we're trying to up the quality. You know, Francis is now, one of the reasons we split KO and WFPF, the other companies, was so that we felt we were spread too thin. You know, again, we responded, the reason we created the KO was to respond to the Kalenji crisis.
Do you have a specific example of an IPF
Well,
quality issue?
The question really
I'm just wondering.
is that you put a bunch of different things out, and they were basically like really good business decisions and trying to solve problems maybe, but they were just kind of like, put the things out, the shoes kind of fell apart, and then you fixed it, and you like continuously got better. But that lower quality standard started off. And with business stuff, that's not necessarily a grow, but with the governance of everything that we are, if that continues with that, then that's not something I think the US would be happy with. So
I get you. You know, again, our equipment, you know, the IO equipment, you know, from the WFPF side, is made by one of the, you know, most trusted manufacturers of gymnastics equipment around. It's got a year warranty. It's got $1 million liability policy on it. The KOs, yeah, they were, you know, we didn't know the shoe business. We were trying to, you know, we were trying to fill a need, and that's again why Francis split off and is running KO so that he can improve the quality. We're now about to partner. They're about to partner with I say we because I still have a small percentage of the company, but we're about to partner with another company that's going to again raise the standard. It's, you know, again, what's that great phrase?
It's heard it through Zig Zig was one of the best salesmen in the world. Recently died 2 years ago. Anything worth selling is worth selling poorly until you figure out how to do it right, and then you become a professional at it. So
that's the motto.
Well, and not, I mean, it's basically, yeah, I guess that's not a good example, but the point is, we're on a learning curve, you know, and we keep trying to improve. I don't see how I don't see how the fact that the KOs fell apart has any, you know, reflects badly on parkour, just reflects badly on our shoes, you know, and you know, people stop buying them, or they obviously people still liked the shoes, so they liked the price point, or they liked the way they felt, and so they kept buying them and hoping they would get better, and we kept trying to make them better. So and we you know, the first version of the boxes, there were problems, and we said, okay, we can't have these holes here, they're not good for the kids. So we tested them out for, you know, a few months at a gym, and so we're doing our best. You know, we don't have a lot of resources. People also look at WFBF because we have this kind of global footprint and think that we're like occupying the top floor of an office building somewhere, and we have all this money. We don't.
And again,
Well, what would be? Go ahead.
it was just to specifically say, like, I understand all that when it comes to business, but when it comes to the governance.
Well, I'll
But that's the
offer
difference.
the counterpoint, which is that we haven't seen Parkour Earth's track record yet, so we could assume that they're going to do everything exactly the way they say, but we don't know what their track record is either.
But again, IPF is a different thing. IPF is not producing products.
Let's
WFBF is a business.
Ed,
We
are
never.
you going in a completely different direction? Or
I want to go in a completely different direction.
Okay, before you go in that direction, I just want to ask, can you, you know, we go 2 years down the road, the tide hasn't turned, and it's still this uphill battle with IPF and USA Parkour. Can you envision, like, ditching some aspect of things to decide, okay, if people just refuse to believe X, then, you know, we're willing to chop off this whole side of it?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a matter of, you know, that is.
I mean, I'm talking about something like roll USA Parkour under and focus entirely on IPF.
That you know, that is the difference between the U.S. and other places. For better or worse, the market decides here.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not going to, you know, if we're not answering a need anymore, if it's not serving people, we're not going to continue, you know, trying to shove stuff down people's throat. I mean, we're just trying to, you know, like I said, we're trying to just answer a need.
Ed, did you want to turn left?
Yeah, so I'm kind of sitting here quite fascinated because culturally the US is very different in terms of parkour in general, and I'm sort of, my entire time in gymnastics, I'm seeing a whole different thing. And so my question is sort of two-parted. First is, are you aware of how different the American parkour scene is from other parts of the world, and do you have active plans to sort of, because IPF and WFBF are clearly things that come from this culture and the values that we have here. Are you interested in IPF sort of engaging with the other parkour cultures and changing the way IPF is such that
Absolutely.
it meets those needs? Or are you kind of thinking that you have a thing here and it's wonderful, and this is what I'd like to take, and you're finding people to do that?
No, it's definitely IPF is definitely the former. It's exactly as Eugene said. It's going to be decided by the membership. Every country gets one vote. Every member federation gets one vote. You know, they can make amendments to the Constitution. The Constitution is very, right now, again, it's very sort of standard Olympic fare. It's been gone through by a bunch of parkour folks so that they felt like, all right, we got to change this, change that. But no, IPF will be determined by the world. You know, I mean, we deal with, in many ways, David and I have a very, our perspective is very international. It always has, just the way we were raised. So that's why we deal with so many, we're doing, you know, so much with so many other cultures, like in the Middle East especially. And so no, we don't want to impose a U.S. outlook on IPF. Now WFBF is again, it is a business.
What's the literal nuts and bolts process for, you know, Iraq to decide that they want to become part of IPF?
So Iraq is you know, again, most of the people we work with are people they've reached out to us and they said, can you help us?
Right, so we have a community of chasers that want.
Right. And Ali Lamy, you know, the video was up online, and when he started, there really wasn't much of a parkour community in Iraq. He's half Iraqi, half Iranian, and And he was just basically said, you know, we're training and my friends are dying. And can you help us raise some money and get some recognition? And so we said, okay. So I said, we'll write a letter to your sports council. So we wrote a letter and wound up writing 3 letters, and the sports council finally gave them a space to train in. And then we did a fundraiser for them to build obstacles. So that, you know, they're just now starting to look at creating a federation. They're trying to create a national governing body because it's been, you know, it's been just basically survival.
So what bar would they have to clear in IPF's eyes to actually go, okay, now that's now a federation, okay, now you can apply? Like what?
Well, you know, again, a lot of countries are, a lot of countries they already have a bar that has to be, before they'll allow a federation. Like Kosovo, which is one of our member bodies and one of the earliest countries to get recognized, they have to have 5, there have to be 5 teams in order for the government to, a minimum of 5 teams in the country in order for their government to recognize, to let them create a federation. So you know, part of it will depend on what the Iraqi government, which is such a mess, but part of it will depend on what that government determines.
I purposely picked Iraq because it's a complex
Yeah,
issue.
yeah.
Did you have another question? Anybody? Am I
Yeah.
ignoring anybody over my shoulder?
So, you stated, and it's listed on the website in your list of national continental governing bodies,
Mhm.
that you consider USA Parkour to be the national governing body for the US. However, USA Parkour is registered as an LLC in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few states where an LLC can also be considered nonprofit. New Jersey is not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that?
Well, I just said that we're creating a new nonprofit for
Did
that.
talk about that?
I already talked about that.
Backing into
However,
a fresh.
it's currently listed on your website as a governing body.
Yeah, it's because it's functioning as a governing body.
Okay.
It's doing the things that a governing body I mean, no other organization is doing.
So what is it? So for USA Parkour, you sell insurance, and what does it do?
It provides safety standards. It provides a basic curriculum. It provides for teacher training. It provides for certification. Those are all things that, and it helps to spread the sport. Those are all
WFPF certification.
WFPF certification, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, just numerous times you mentioned with regards to IPF and other facets of the business that athletes and community are driving most of the decisions, not you guys. Yeah, earlier in this same discussion, somebody asked how the decision was made. You guys said you were really made. That being said, numerous other instances through IPF has shown up where you guys have used athletes' imagery and likeness to represent IPF without their knowledge. Just because they were affiliated with WFPF and leveraging all that marketing material.
Yeah,
So
that
going
was
forward, is that the kind of same things that we can expect out
No.
of WFPF?
No,
Because
and again, we've apologized. That was over I believe you're referring to the Gender Equity Initiative. That was a misunderstanding that we, we checked with every person thereafter to make sure when that came up as an issue, we checked with everybody, and as soon as somebody said they didn't understand that they were going to be on the IPF website, we took them down. There was an issue over, you know, we kept getting hammered over Tanya about that, you know, she still was up there, and David knows her very well, speaks to her all the time, and she said, no, I want to be a part of this. So, so it was, you know, we're not looking to put we're not looking to exploit anybody. It was a misstep. We thought we were doing something good. Because we didn't want to lead that. We wanted women to lead it, you know, and to come up with the ideas and brainstorm.
I think this particular incident, if people saw it, it was, I'm not going to name names, but somebody brought it up in the Parkour forum, and it's a lot of things in there, like lightning rods. Somebody posts, there's 1,600 people in the group, and in like 30 minutes, you get like, there's 100 responses on there. And I think it's a good example of what I consider a very minor issue, which is basically a paperwork mistake or a misunderstanding. That's a minor issue, what happened in the situation. But because it happened in that forum, it blows up into a big deal. So I think it's important to separate minor missteps from actual things like crossing T's for limited liability and those kinds of things.
And I don't mind
I don't mean to
minimize
the thing, but
I don't mean to minimize the misunderstanding, minimize the fact that people were upset that their image was there and they didn't know it would be, and we apologized for that, and we tried to correct it. So I don't mean to minimize that, but there was a lot of back and forth going on after we had spoken to the people, and we were still getting told there were still images up there that didn't belong there.
Yeah. So what would, I mean, clearly, obviously, there's a lot of pushback against them. Let's just talk about USA Parkour as a national, there's a lot of pushback against that. What, if you have any ideas, what would you envision as like next steps? So if we just take it the fact that you've been working on that for several years, it's clearly not taking off like, you know, wildfire. What would be your next step to try and win over the hearts and minds of all the people that you want?
Well, I think I think number one is the conversations that Justin's having with the other, the other sort of U.S. leaders, and see where that goes.
It does speak interestingly to ArtOfRetreat. That's exactly what this kind of event is for. You following on, or go ahead, Blake?
Yeah, related to this, I think there's been a little bit of pushback against the USA Parkour being representative of the U.S. community here. I'm just curious what that represents on a larger scale, the groups that you're claiming to represent. I don't know this. I'd actually be curious to know the list of countries that you guys have in IPF. Is that similar levels of controversy? Or?
No, one of the things we ask immediately is, are there other groups that are in opposition to you? We do our due diligence in terms of, are you really a leader there? So the countries that we're working with right now that are recognized are Kosovo, Iran, Tajikistan, Afghanistan.
There was a question about the China, the Asian Freerunning and Parkour Union.
Asia Freerunning Parkour Union, yeah, it's a continental governing body that, they came to us, they said, look, we want to help you. We want to help you get in touch with government sports councils, help you get in touch with, they're involved in other extreme sports. So we thought it was a worthwhile partnership.
We're down to, I think we're down to 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more than that. Anybody who hasn't asked a question yet?
Yeah, so earlier in your talk you mentioned working with your advisors. Who are your advisors?
Our main advisor is a guy named Mike Jackie, who was, who just is really an expert in sports governance. He ran USA Gymnastics. He was the first one to say, you got to protect this against FIG. He worked at FIG. He was a vice president of FIG for about 8 years. He also ran USA Skiing. So, and he was an early supporter of parkour. He just really, we met him at Camp Woodward. We did the first parkour demo at Camp Woodward, and he really said, look, I believe this is really an amazing thing, and how can I help you? So he helped us, he helped put us in touch with the insurance folks to get the insurance product going, helped us determine what kind of a certification we would need to get the insurance, and has been an advisor. Not our only advisor, but he's been our main advisor in terms of governance and sort of the international politics of sport.
Quick follow-up. What do you think made him transition from gymnastics to working with parkour?
He just did not. He did not like the way gymnastics had gone. He felt that it. First of all, they changed the rules when they made it from the perfect 10 into the just cumulative score of all the tricks you do. He just felt like they had ruined, that FIG had ruined the sport by making it so, there's so much pressure on kids that there's not fun anymore. It's not, the recreational programs were really destroyed by FIG's insistence on, and that boys, he could see boys just weren't interested in it anymore. He was a Hall of Fame gymnast himself. And he just was, he was really upset over where FIG had led gymnastics rather.
So it seems to me like IPF represents a lot of parts of the world that are not well represented here right now. And so I'm curious, to the extent that the countries and communities that you represent have official positions and opinions, what are their opinions on participation in the Olympics, and also in what a path forward for a merger or some kind of way towards having one global governing body? What are their opinions on those two issues?
So the Olympics really is an interesting issue. I don't think anybody really, we don't really care about the Olympics, whether parkour is in the Olympics or not. But what is important, and what is important in many of these countries, is that, and we also, another country that we've just has come aboard is Ukraine. Ukraine has one of the oldest parkour federations in the world. They've been around 10 years, and they're recognized as a street sport. 90% of the money in the country goes to Olympic sports. 9% goes to non-Olympic sports. 1% goes to street sports. So the idea that they could get recognized by their Olympic committee would suddenly allow for more money to flow into the sport. Afghanistan, we were able to, and it's different in every country. So in Afghanistan, where we were very close with a number of teams, one team, they call themselves Parkour Generation because they were the first real team there. So they, they had talked, they'd said, look, there's a problem, someone is basically, that the government has sort of appointed somebody to be head of the Parkour Federation. The guy was the bodyguard of the guy who was head of the NOC, the National Olympic Committee, and they put him in charge of parkour. So this was a way because we have this relationship with the guy from Asia Freerunning Parkour Union, we said, there are people in sports in Afghanistan? And he said, yes, I can make some phone calls. So we were able to get to this guy and we say, look, you know nothing about parkour, why are you running this organization? And he said, well, it was offered to me, and I said, what if we introduced you to the leaders of the Afghan parkour community? And so he said, great, because I don't know what I'm doing. So they introduced, and every one of them now are on the Council for Parkour. And it got recognized by its NOC, and the government has now approved the building of 15 parkour gyms around Afghanistan.
So Ukraine is for participation in the Olympics, and
well, they're for recognition. It's basically recognition that I don't think anybody would care about anyone we talk to really cares about the Olympics, but what the recognition can do, especially in poorer countries where they don't have parkour as a business. It's just there's not enough money around. Whereas if the government, it's recognized by their Olympic committee, then they'll get money from the government.
Even if they're not in the Olympics?
Even if they're not on the Olympics.
I think the distinction is recognized Olympic sport versus participatory. There's the ones that are performing the Olympics is a subset of the recognized Olympic sport.
And what was the second part of your question?
The second one was, do any of the countries or communities have a defined position on how we should do this merger or one side surrendering, whatever ultimately needs to happen so that we have one global governing body?
No, I don't think they necessarily. I mean, they are aware of. Many of them are aware of the situation. We make people aware of the situation, but we haven't had a lot of discussion about what will happen down the road. It's just we're basically again, every community has different needs, and we're trying to answer those needs on an individual basis.
I think you had a question.
It's just a thought that seems to have fallen. We had mentioned the story about Dan Levant being very anti-competition. What happened because a lot of talk about the Olympics is about competition. So did you change his mind, or how does this reflect?
Yeah, we said we did. We changed his mind that it's not but basically where we always come from with the competition, and WFBF was the first. Everybody was afraid to call something a parkour competition. I mean, Red Bull, that's why they called it Art of Motion. We had this long conversation in the first one, and they said, no, we can't call it a parkour competition. The whole world will turn against us. So the MTV Parkour Challenge was, I think, the first real parkour competition. And so Daniel, I said, look, Daniel, it's not a competition against other people. It's about yourself. And again, we look at, I love words, and the original meaning of the word compete in the Latin is to strive together, not against. So that's, I've always felt that, and that's what we convinced Daniel of. And then, he did the show, and I think he kind of went back to his, he doesn't compete now, but yeah, I mean, it was all about trying to bring different points of view together.
Anything else?
I couldn't find this online, so I'll ask it here. Was the IPF Constitution made official by a majority vote of its members, or not by what process?
No, we put it out there, and there really weren't any members when we created the Constitution initially, because we were doing it to try and stop FIG and start the process of recognition of the sport accord. But again, as soon as there's a Congress, people can change the Constitution. They can, So it'll be an open process.
Satisfied? Thank you very much. Thank you.